How many of you would say that digital is impacting your business in some way today? Great. How many of you are creating some kind of digital service in advertising, e-commerce, banking, education? Every one of you is a media company today. And it's not just because you're all content producers who can reach anyone, anywhere. It's that while many of our businesses are confronting the full force of digital only recently, media companies have been doing so for the last 25 years. So their experiences in digital can tell us what we can expect to see in our businesses and our lives. Watch them closely, understand what's worked, and what traps to avoid. Here's one. In today's digital world, the belief that content is king or product quality wins is one of the most important traps to avoid. Success comes not just from the content you make, but the connections you create. Let's look at newspapers. We all know the story. The internet killed newspapers because online news is faster, better, has more variety than print news. Except, this story is wrong. The decline didn't start 10 or 15 years ago. It started 70 years ago with radio, TV, then cable. The real reason the internet killed newspapers has very little to do with news content and everything to do with classifieds. Jobs, cars, real estate ads. Revenues from circulation have barely declined in the last decade. Revenues from classifieds dropped 90%. And the reason has to do with how we consume news versus classifieds. The news site we choose to go to is the one which updates regularly, where it's easy to search, where we trust that the news is not fake, at least for most of us. The classified site we choose to go to is really dependent on one thing, whichever has the most listings. A site can be beautiful and searchable. If there's no listings, there's no value. But where does everyone list? Oh, where there's the most buyers. More buyers, more sellers, more buyers. It's a feedback loop. The value we get from a news site depends on product features. The value we get from a classified site depends on where everyone else is. This is an example of what are called network effects. And in network markets, once you're ahead, you get further and further ahead. You win it all. So there's content and there's connections. And thinking that content wins in today's digital world means you've fallen into what I call the content trap. This story of news versus classifieds is a metaphor for how digital will impact your organization, no matter what it might be. News is a hub-to-spoke model. We produce content or product in the hub, and we sell to consumers in the spokes. This is like any business, cars, banking, education. The benefit of digital is we can now sell to many more consumers, reach many more spokes. A second benefit of digital is that the spokes can interact back with the hub. They can talk back to us. Consumers can tell us what they want. We can personalize their offers. This is all about reach, data, interactivity. But there's a third and more profound benefit of digital, which comes from realizing that digital allows spoke-to-spoke interactions. It lets everyone connect. This seems so obvious, and yet most organizations miss this. And part of the reason is they think of digital in terms of reach and data, and they miss its incredible power, connectivity. Even Apple learned this the hard way. For 30 years, they made the best personal computer, insanely great, as Steve Jobs used to say, and they ended up with only 3% market share. The reason is that Microsoft created a larger network of users who could share files with one another. Insanely great did not win. And despite the remarkable transformation for the last 15 years, most of Apple's value has come from other products. The iPod, iPhone, iPad. Its market share in personal computers has grown from 3% to about 7% globally. So don't feel sorry for Microsoft. Despite being on the losing end of so many battles for 15 years, it's still number 3 in market value. That's the power of connectedness. Google created a nice social network. Many thought better than Facebook's. It never took off. As one observer wrote, there's no one else playing in the sandbox but me. Google was creating, Facebook was connecting. Marriott is selling, Airbnb is connecting. That's why they can post these rude tweets. Uber created a ride-sharing service. It relied on its own drivers and cars. It was growing nicely. Then when it opened up the network to third-party partner drivers, it grew exponentially. If you want growth, innovate. If you want exponential growth, connect. The most formidable business based on connectivity is not West, it's East, in China. Tencent started with free instant messaging 20 years ago, moved from there to social networks, then multiplayer games, and finally WeChat. To make money, they realized that when people's online identity is defined by random 8-digit numbers or emojis, by the way, this was before email and broadband, so people couldn't upload pictures, people want to stand out from the crowd. So Tencent gave people the option to buy your favorite 8-digit number or buy your favorite virtual shirt on an emoji for 99 cents. By the way, in a billion-person market, if only 3 to 5% of people pay, that's good enough. And WeChat isn't just a mobile messenger platform. You can read news, you can share videos, you can buy products, you can rent cars and bikes, and you can transfer money to your friends through these virtual red envelopes. These virtual red packets became so popular last year that Tencent's share of mobile payments increased from 19% to 37% in 1 year. That's $25 billion of market revenue, $500 billion of market value, all from connecting people. If you're a bank or a retailer competing in online, you're not competing against other banks and retailers, you're competing against this messenger platform. These possibilities are not limited by the technology of our time. They are driven by our imagination. Some media companies are learning how to combine content and connections. What helped the National Football League TV ratings for much over the last decade was not putting this content online, but an entirely new digitally connected product, fantasy sports. Fantasy gamers watch more TV because they want to track how their fantasy players are performing in the real games. Streaming is content, fantasy is connections. Or take Schibsted in Norway. They won online classifieds and then took this philosophy of connectedness into the newsroom. Remember this volcanic ash crisis in Iceland? It created havoc all over Europe. The most popular stories during this crisis were not the health implications, the weather patterns, or the geological formations. No. Air travel was disrupted. People started posting messages on Schibsted's boards. How do I get from Oslo to Trondheim? Other people responded, oh, I'm driving. I can pick up 3 people at the train station at 3 o'clock. Schibsted's IT team created an app within 7 hours called Hitchhiker Central, whose only function was to allow readers to share information about rides. It became so popular that the editorial team started asking itself during every major event, how can we help readers help each other? This was the question we asked at Harvard Business School when approaching online education. It's not enough to create great content. You need someone to answer students' questions online when faculty aren't there. So we asked ourselves, how can we get students to help each other? For that, you need to create an online community. We helped create this, and this is the geography of student conversations we're seeing today around the world. Nearly every question is correctly answered by other students. It's inspiring. It's also humbling. They don't really need us. By the way, notice the different forms of connectedness across these stories. It's not just about social or data. It can be direct with other buyers. It can be indirect with suppliers. It can be about communicating, sharing, gifting, learning, trading. It can be one large network. It can be 325 communities on a single network. That's not my site. It's different for everyone. Find your connect. We're all media companies today. But the difference is the future of media is not just about broadcasting, reach, and content. It's about connecting. Why do we find it so hard to change mindsets in business? Because most of the time we define our business in terms of what we make, not who or what do we connect. And so if you've noticed one thread that cuts across all these examples, that's what I'd like to leave you with. Success today comes not from understanding how to make content better or understanding technology better. It comes from understanding people better. Thank you.